When we begin to understand biblical prophecy, what's about to happen next is going to affect the whole planet Earth. We lost our land, our culture, and our identity. There is a great awakening amongst the scattered tribes, and now we must return to the covenant of our forefathers. The Father chose out of all nations the nation of Israel. Okay, shalom, shalom, peace and blessings, Mishpachar. I pray that everybody is having a great day so far as we begin today's class. All right, today's class is called The Whore That Sits Upon Many Waters. And we're going to be dealing with the book of Revelation, the 17th chapter. But today is just an intro. Okay, once again, the whore that sits upon many waters. Revelation 17 and actually 18 is what I will be discussing soon, but today is just the intro. Okay, before we get started, let's go ahead and do what we always do. Let's go ahead and do the Father's Prayer, and we're going to do it in Brit, and then we're going to do it in English, all right? And I just want to thank everybody for taking time once again out of your busy schedule to join me here this morning. All right, this morning here to go over, I believe, to be a very important topic, the whore that sits upon many waters. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin with prayer. Abinu Shabbat Shamayim, Yit Kudash Shemka, O Yit Barak Melkutka, Retsumka Yahiye Ishui, Ba Shamayim, U Ba Aretz, Ut At Ayin, Lak Menu Tamadit. Umakulanu, Kata'atenu, Ka'asher Anaknu, Mokhalim, Al Tabi Ainu Layide, Nasayon, Shamranu, Makar. All this thing belongs to the Father, and we thank the Father for sending his Son, who we believe to be Yahushua Ha'Mashiach, who is the atoning sacrifice for the nation of Israel. So now we're going to do it in English. Our Father, which art in heaven, set apart be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Father, we pray that you give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not, Father, into temptation, but deliver us from all that is evil. For thine is the kingdom, and all glory and esteem belongs to the Father. Once again, all glory, all esteem belongs to the Father. And once again, we thank you for sending your Son, Yahushua HaMashiach, to be that atoning sacrifice for the nation of Israel. Hallelujah. And Mishpachar, what I also wanted to do is do the sovereign's prayer in the way that I was taught from the very beginning. I still find it very interesting. I'll go into a little bit more in depth why I'm also including this style of praying in my presentation. And if anybody that's been following me for the last couple of months, you've noticed that I've added a different pronunciation with the prayer. All right. Abanawa Shabbat Shemayim Kudash Haya Shamka Yahuah Malak Wavka Ba'ar Ratazaka Haya Ba'ar Ratazak Kawa Haya Bashamayim Nathananawa Lakam Kal Yawum Wasalak Lanawa, Kawab Wap Yanawa, Wala'a, Babaya Anawa, Banasa Yawan, Abal, Hawashayanawa, Mayan, Rai, Kaya Laka, Hamalakwaf, Walahala, Wahathap Praharath, Lahai William. Again, all this thing belongs to the Father through his Son, Yahushua HaMashiach, once again, who is the atoning sacrifice for the nation of Israel. So, all of you that are coming in, if you can kindly, I pray, hit the like button, because when you hit the like button, this causes a algorithm and it helps the video to get across to those that might be interested in today's topic, the whore that sits upon many waters. All right. So it doesn't take any time at all. Just hit the like button. And once again, this spreads the algorithm so that everybody can get a chance to know that your brother Kassad is actually on the air and he's about to go in on, I believe, a very important topic. Now, before we segue into today's class, Mishpachar, I want it to be known, I believe that all of the scriptures are extremely important, all of them. Understanding prophecy is extremely important. Understanding how to lay the foundation is even more important. How is it that we're going to lay out this format to get us to the point where we now understand or understand what is happening today? Is the Bible still relevant today? Once again, is the Bible still relevant today? Did everything conclude in 70 AD the way that some are led to believe? Or is there still something greater to come? I believe that there is still something greater to come. Meaning now is that those events that happened during the first century, they happened during the first century. I have no arguments about what happened with Jerusalem, the besiege of Jerusalem with Vespasian and Titus, the destroying of Jerusalem, more say the temple. I get and understand all of that. But is there more to the story? What I find interesting, looking at the book of Daniel, especially, actually the whole book of Daniel, but if I was to pay close attention to chapters 2, 7, and 8, for example, when you look at the Babylonian captivity, Babylon controlled central areas in his regime. Meaning now is that it wasn't global. You see the same thing happening with the Medes and Persians. All of the lands that the Medes and the Persians had conquered, they had jurisdiction and rulership over those areas, not global. You see now the Greeks doing the same thing. All of the territories that they had conquered leads us to believe that they had control over only those regions. It was not global. Even when we begin to look at the first stages of Rome, Rome wasn't global. But according to his history now, they actually now had more regions under their belt than the other nations. And then we have what I believe to be is an extension of Rome. All right, and an extension of Rome. And that extension of Rome is America. Now, obviously, if I stopped at 70 AD, if I began to say America is an extension of Rome, that's not going to make any sense, because with some of us, we've put a period at the end of the book of Revelation by saying that everything concluded in 70 AD. Okay, that's fine. A person is able to believe whatever it is that they want to believe. I'm here to say that the extension of Rome is global. America has become a global empire, meaning all four corners of the earth. Babylon didn't have a global regime. The Medo-Persian Empire didn't have a global regime. The Greeks didn't have a global regime. The Romans at its beginning stages didn't. And so this leads us, I believe, to the point where are we today? Is the Bible still relevant? And again, this is just an intro. And after the intro comes the meat. So the whore that sits on many waters, Revelation 17 and 18. But we want to deal with basically now just the intro on how we are to look at these end time events here. This is going to be a very short class. This is just the preliminaries here, the intro, until we segue into what is actually going on in Revelation, the 17th chapter. This is the question, Mishpachah. This is the 100,000 or the $100 million question. Is it definitive that Babylon in Revelation is the city of Jerusalem? Once again, is it definitive that Babylon in Revelation is the city of Jerusalem? Most scholars would say that the whore of Babylon, seated on 7 hills, is actually now the city of Rome. There are some who argue that the whore of Babylon is Yerushalayim, also known as Jerusalem. So we have 2 points that scholars are arguing, and I do see that a lot of the Israelites today are arguing the very same points. Is it Rome or is it Jerusalem? Now, can we tell from the descriptions of Babylon? Very important because I have it in caps. Can we tell from the descriptions of Babylon in Revelation chapters 17 and 18 that Yahushua is referring to the city of Rome? All right. Is Yahushua, John on the island of Patmos, is he referring to the city of Rome? Watch this now. I do believe that Rome can be called Babylon because she destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD. I believe that that's a no-brainer. But what other things can we look at in the text that tells us that Babylon, in fact, is the city of Rome? So, Mishpachah, please pay very close attention. I'm really homing in on the descriptions in Revelation 17 and 18. All right, Revelation 17 and 18. And what I also believe is very important is that we look at what does the word Babylon means. All right, what does the word Babylon means? So let me just get a little bit more to the point here. The word Babylon, or the word Babel, means confusion. I am arguing that the spirit of Babylon moved through all 4 metals. All 4 metals. Babylon is associated with idolatry, witchcraft, fornication, adultery. My argument here today is that every metal, every beast in the book of Daniel took part in what we call idolatry. So any nation, king, or peoples that is following idolatry fits under the umbrella, fits under the title of Babylon. This is the reason why I said earlier, I see no issues looking at John the Immerser. Is it possible that John the Baptist, not John the Baptist, but John on the island of Patmos looked at Rome as Babylon? Let's read on. Is Yashra'al being described as the great whore in Revelation? Let's take a look at Exhibit B. We're going to go to the book of Jeremiah. All right. The 3rd chapter, verses 1 to 3. Now, obviously, here, Jeremiah is speaking to the nation of Israel. But let's look at the passage and see now, is there anything coded here that can help us to understand the word Babel, the word Babylon, and the nation of Israel? Now, they say, which are the religious leaders now that is governing Israel, they say if a man divorces his wife, okay, and she goes from him, and she, the woman, becomes another man's, may he return to her again. Now, there's a lot that's going on here so far. First of all, we know that from the beginning, it was not so that a man divorces his wife. That was looked upon as a bad stigma upon that relationship when a man has to divorce his wife. But we know now in the times that we're living in, it's fine, it's okay. And in actuality, what is being believed in today's society, in the case if a man divorces his wife or a wife divorces her husband, it is looked at as a power move. Brother, you know what? It took a lot of courage for you to do that. I commend you. Sister, you divorced your husband. I commend you. That took a lot of energy. And there's a lot of variables that's also going on with this here. But again, from the beginning, it was not so. But watch what's happening here. They say if a man divorces his wife and she goes from him and become another man's, may he, which is the first husband, return to her again. This was now pertaining to the wickedness of the nation of Israel, and so that you won't have two parties now who are unwilling to compromise for the bigger goal, and keeping their relationship together. Listen, you know what? These are now the prerequisites on how you can actually divorce one another. But I want you to understand, from the beginning, it was not so. So what we see now happening in the book of Deuteronomy, the 24th chapter, this is something that was implemented because, once again, of the wickedness between the man and the woman, and things obviously has gotten worse today. But the question is now, may he return to her again? Would not that land be greatly polluted? But watch this now. But you have played the harlot with many lovers, yet return to me, saith the sovereign. But watch what happens here. In order for this now to take place in regards to the relationship that the Father has with the nation of Israel, Romans, the 7th chapter, explains something I believe to be very important. The only way that the bride can truthfully return back to her husband is if or when the bridegroom dies. My argument here is that the Mashiach is the groom, the nation of Israel is the bride. So with the death and resurrection of the Mashiach, this now gives the bride to the opportunity now to return to the bridegroom, which I believe to be the Mashiach. This should also let us know that coverings are very important, extremely important. So leaving or disobeying your covering, the consequences now can be very deadly. Just like we all should know, protocol. The protocol is the father, the son, the man, the woman, the children. That's how a true Hebrew relationship works. The man can't operate outside of his covering, the woman can't operate outside of her covering, and the children can't operate outside of their covering. That's just how the program works. Any issues with that, you take it up with the father. But watch how this happens though. But you have played the harlot with many lovers, yet return to me, says the sovereign. Lift up your eyes to the desolate heights and see. Where have you not lain with men? So we see that Israel fits the description of being a whore. Israel fits the description of being an adulterous woman. Israel fits the description of being labeled under the title Babylon. Babel. Confusion. Let's read on. By the roads you have sat for them, like an Arabian in the wilderness, and you have polluted the land with your harlotries and your wickedness. Therefore the showers have been withheld, and there has been no latter rain. You have had a harlot's forehead. Very important. Israel has had a harlot's forehead. Israel has also been called a harlot. A harlot. You refuse to be ashamed. And I think that speaks volumes. Collectively as a people, the nation of Israel has committed whoredom, adultery, fornication, and is still going on today when we begin to look at the bigger picture, which is our rebellion against the Father. And our rebellion against the Father, watch how it trickles down into our relationships with one another. The people that was given laws, statutes, and commandments, talking about what happened at Mount Sinai. We are a covenant people. We have blasphemed the covenant that was made at Mount Sinai, and we walk around and we're not ashamed. A covenant people broke the commandments, and we walk around not ashamed, and we're not doing our responsibility, meaning now is that we're not being a light for the other nations. And as it trickles down into our personal relationships with the Ish and the Isha, the Isha with the Ish, you still have the same problem. You have the harlotry, you have the adultery, the behavior of a Babylonian, and we still walk around like everything is okay and we're not ashamed. To break covenant relationship is the ultimate crime. All right? I'm going to say this again. Breaking covenant relationship is the ultimate crime. And being that it's the ultimate crime, the penalty is death. Death. So it is very important for us to understand what happened during Old Testament times and whether or not now in January the 4th, all right, January the 4th, does those rules in the Old Testament still apply today? And I say yes. There is no period. There is no such thing as the end. The word E-N-D, there's no such thing as the word end in Hebrew thought and culture. No such word as the end. There is no beginning. There is no end. And we talked about years ago about Ein Sof and what that means. There's no beginning. There's no end. So there is no period at the end of 70 AD. Watch how this goes. Now, let's take another look in the possibility of Yashra'al, which is the nation of Israel, as being the woman described in Revelation, the 17th chapter, Exhibit B. Hosea 4:12. My people, which is a personal noun, my people referring to the nation of Israel. And of course, this is Old Testament writings, but is it still applicable to today? My people ask counsel from their wooden idols. The last I remember, not just Israel, but we're talking about Israel here. We're still involved in Christmas. Oh, let's back it up here a little bit. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, that is all Babylonian. That is still idolatry. That is still fornication. It's still the same thing. My argument is that after 70 AD, did the spirit of Babylon continue after 70 AD? Did it continue after 70 AD? New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, all pagan, all Babylonian. You have after that, you have April Fool's Day, and we know the whole history behind that, because there was a group of people now, namely Israelites, who believed in the month of Abib, some call it Nisan, where we now have the beginning of the year, starting during the springtime, when we begin to see signs of greenery, where we see now herbs, flowers, plants starting to bud. That is your new year, not the dead of winter. I don't participate in Happy New Year, but I do recognize New Year for argument's sake for working, doing business transactions. But no, I don't tell another man, Happy New Year. I don't get involved in any of those pagan holidays. And then now we know we have the 4th of July. We have, Thanksgiving. We have Halloween. All of these pagan rituals that was taking place now or operating during the first century, it is still happening today. So this lets me know once again that the spirit of Babylon is still running today. So, but my people ask counsel from their wooden idols, and their staff informs them. Watch this now. For the spirit of harlotry has caused them to stray. The spirit of harlotry is Babylon. Babylon. We first begin to see that now during Sumer. Abraham came out of Sumer. We begin to see this now operating under Nimrod, because we know that Babylon would have been now Iraq. We understand with Nimrod, and the way that the story goes is he goes out to war, and while he's out to war, his wife, Semiramis now, she has relations with another man. Nimrod dies in battle. So for her to save face, she says that now she was impregnated by the sun. By the sun, gives birth now to Tammuz. And this whole thing about him now having the spirit of Nimrod reincarnated. And so again, it's all Babylonian. And then now we have more confusion where we have now Hammurabi. That is also under the umbrella of Babylon. Then we have the Egypt. Then we have the Assyrians. Then we have Babylon with Nebuchadnezzar. Then we have the Medo-Persian Empire. Then we have the Greeks. Then we have the Romans. And then we have what we have today, just trying to show that the spirit of Babylon has been moving since the time of Abraham. And it is still relevant today. So for the spirit of harlotry has caused them, identifying who's the them, and the them is still relevant today, has caused them to stray, and they, identifying the they, they have played the harlot against their mighty one, their Elohim. So without even questioning this harlotry, this spirit of Babylon, fornication, adultery is making reference to who? The nation of Israel. Hands down. Hands down. There should be no argument whatsoever. But once again, it is very important that we put everything in its proper context. When we escapulate verses from out of chapters, it is also very important for us to now read the whole chapter, keep it with this out of its proper context, because a lot of times what is happening is that there's more to the story. More to the story. Because the question is, was the nation of Israel the only people that was prescribed or given the title whore, harlot, adultery? Was that title only prescribed to the nation of Israel? And I'm here to share with you, Mr. Bakar, here this morning, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So it is very important for us to pay very close attention to detail. Okay, now, let's take a look at some other nations that also held claim to this title, Babylon, aka the Great Whore. All right, so what I'm about to do, Mishpachah, is I'm about to play a video. And what I'm going to do with this video here is I'm not going to give you the name of the book that I'm reading from, but pay very close attention to the words that I'm going to be teaching, and you tell me what nation is this prophet talking against. All right, so we're about to start the video now. Woe to the city of blood, totally deceitful, full of plunder, never without prey, the crack of the whip and rumble of the wheel, galloping horse and jolting chariot, charging horsemen, flashing sword, shining spear, heaps of slain, mounds of corpses, dead bodies without end. They stumble over their dead because of the continual prostitution of the prostitute, the attractive mistress of sorcery, who treats nations and clans like merchandise by her prostitution and sorcery. I am against you. This is the declaration of the Lord of armies. I will lift your skirts over your face and display your nakedness to nations, your shame to kingdoms. I will throw filth on you and treat you with contempt. I will make a spectacle of you. Then all who see you will recoil from you, saying, Nineveh is devastated. Who will show sympathy to her? Where can I find anyone to comfort you? Are you better than thieves that sat along the Nile with water surrounding her, whose rampart was the sea, the river her wall? Cush and Ethiopia were her endless source of strength. Put and Libya were among her allies. No, she became an exile. She went into captivity. Her children were also dashed to pieces at the head of every street. They cast lots for her. Dignitaries and all her nobles were bound in chains. You also will become drunk. You will hide. You will also seek refuge from the enemy. All your fortresses are fig trees with figs that ripen first. When shaken, they fall right into the mouth of the eater. Look, your troops are like women among you. Your land city gates are wide, open to your enemies. Fire will devour the bars of your gates. Draw water for the siege. Strengthen your fortress. Step into the clay and tread the mortar. Take hold of the brick mold. The fire will devour you there. The sword will cut you down. It will devour you like young locusts. Multiply yourselves like the young locusts. Multiply like the swarming locusts. You have made your merchants more numerous than the stars of the sky. The young locust stripes the land and flies away. Your court officials are like the swarming locusts, and your scribes like the clouds of locusts, which settle on the walls on a cold day. When the sun rises, they take off, and no one knows where they are. King of Assyria, your shepherds slumber, your officers sleep. Your people are scattered across the mountains with no one to gather them together. There is no remedy for your injury. Your wound is severe. All who hear the news about you will clap their hands because of you. For who has not experienced your constant cruelty? Okay, Mr. Carr, we just read Nahum, the third chapter. Now, the reason why I wanted to go over Nahum, the third chapter, because there are some very important lingos or language that is being used here. And what I found interesting is that this language is also being used in the book of Revelation, the 12th chapter, 17th chapter, and the 18th chapter. But without you knowing that I was reading from the book of Nineveh, it's making mention of Nineveh as being a city of blood, totally deceitful, full of plunder, never without prey. And then it begins to talk about now is that Nineveh was also called a city of prostitution, of prostitutes. Verse 4, because of the continual prostitution of the prostitute, the attractive mistress of sorcery, who treats nations and clans like merchandise by her prostitutions and sorcery. This is not talking about Israel here. This is a decree against Nineveh. Nineveh. And what I'm trying to show here is that the language that is being used against Nineveh is the same language we see now over 500 years later, making reference to now in the book of Revelation, the nation of Israel. So the terminology that is being used in the book of Revelation, as far as Israel being an adulterous nation, it wasn't only applicable to them, but also the other nations. Let's look at Nahum, the third chapter, verse 5. I am against you. Now, this is the declaration or the decree of Yahuah of hosts against now Nineveh. I will lift your skirts over your face. That sounds familiar? And display your nakedness to the nations. That sounds familiar? Your shame to kingdoms. I will throw filth on you and treat you with contempt. I will make a spectacle of you. Then all who see you will recoil. And another word for recoil would withdraw from you, saying, Nineveh is devastated. Who would show sympathy to her? The same language is being used in the book of Revelation, the 17th and 18th chapter. Because the 17th chapter makes mention of what's decreed against Jerusalem. And then we see now the events begin to actually happen in Revelation, the 18th chapter. Then it goes on now, referring to, once again, not only was Israel given this title, but also other nations. Verse 8, are you better than Thebes that sat along the Nile with water surrounding her, whose rampart was the sea, the river her wall? Verse 8, compare that now to Revelation, the 17th chapter, when it talks about the great whore that sits upon many waters. I don't want to go too far, so I'm going to back off that a little bit, all right? Because there's a wealth of information in Revelation, the 17th chapter, that I want to bring out the next time. But what I'm trying to do here, I'm comparing literature. I'm comparing language. Because what I see happening a lot, and I do agree, Israel is the culprit. And the reason why I say Israel is the culprit is because she made a covenant, once again, with the supreme being and broke that covenant, which happened at Mount Sinai. But what do we do now with the other component to the story? Babel, the spirit of Babylon. What do we do with that? Because it is still, once again, operating today. It didn't stop. And what happens now, every 4 years, everyone participates in voting in a new God. And it just happened. Who or which God of Babylon do we want now to represent us for the next 4 years? Is it Kamala Harris or is it Donald Trump? And they are all working under the vibration, the spirit of Babylon. None of them talks about restoring Torah. None of them. But if we pay very close attention, especially with the first metal, the first beast, meaning Babylon, when Nebuchadnezzar took his position as king, he was supposed to reign in righteousness. Righteousness. This is the reason why he had noble ones amongst his kingdom, to show him that he must reign in righteousness, because Nebuchadnezzar was full of idolatry, whoredom. But every time Nebuchadnezzar called out to his gods, Marduk, Nabu, Ishtar, none of those gods came to his rescue when he called upon them. It was the mighty ones of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that Daniel proclaimed while he was in Babylon, and that one was able to now deliver Daniel and the 3 young men from torment. Remember the lion's den? Remember the burning furnace? And there was someone inside of the burning furnace with the young men, the Babylonian names, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. Remember that? Remember when the Father put this disagreeable spirit upon Nebuchadnezzar? And for 7 years, he behaved like an animal. And once he came to the realization that there's only one mighty one, which is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that's when he regained his consciousness. Remember that? But how he suddenly fell back into idolatry because he began to think that everything that he has gotten it by his hands. Every nation that ruled was supposed to have now ruled in righteousness. And then you have now Cyrus now, who was called the anointed of the Father. The anointed. Israel was supposed to have learned through those 4 captivities that when the nations called upon their gods couldn't help them at all. Couldn't save them. And this was the whole meaning behind the 10 plagues that the Father now sent on Egypt. Because when Pharaoh got his magicians, his soothsayers, his prognosticators, and they tried to now stop the plagues that the Father sent on Egypt, they were not able to do that. They were not able to accomplish the stopping of the decree that the Father sent upon Egypt, destroying those 10 gods there. Israel then was supposed to have learned that there is no other mighty one but the mighty one of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the same thing exists today. The political system, the judicial system, the legislative system would not be able to help the nation of Israel or no nation on the planet Earth by using their forms of policies and trying to bring about peace. Peace can only come through Torah. Once again, peace can only come through Torah, period. Let's read down here just a little bit more. Cush and Egypt were her endless sources of strength. Put and Libya were among her allies. Yet she became an exile. She, meaning Nineveh, went into captivity. Watch the terminology that's being used here. Her children were also dashed to pieces at the head of every street. That sounds familiar? Her children were also dashed to pieces at the head of every street. What I'm trying to share here this evening, whenever there's rebellion, the punishment is cyclical. Once again, whenever there is disobedience, the punishment is cyclical. Read down a little bit more. All your fortresses are fig trees, with figs that ripen first. When shaken, they fall right into the mouth of the eater. Look, your troops are like women among you. Your land city gates are wide open to your enemies. Fire will devour the bars of your gates. Draw water for the siege. Strengthen your fortress. Step into the clay and tread the mortar. Take hold to the brick mold. And so we know the rest of the story here. But it's the same story. The same end result over and over and over again. Mishpachah, I am here to share with you. Nations rise and nations fall. And the reason why that happens is because they're not following Torah. Rome had a beginning. And I'm going to use these words real loosely. Rome had an end. There was an extension of Rome with America, which came into power in 1776. She had her beginnings, and rest assured, just like Babylon, just like the Medo-Persian Empire, just like the Greeks in the early stages of Rome, she will also have her ending. Because she's operating under the spirit of Babylon. Confusion. Let's read on. In the next slide that I want us to pay very close attention to, Mr. McCarr, I want everyone to please pay very close attention to the language that is being used in this book I'm about to read. Like I said, without me sharing with you the name of the book, who do you believe that the writer of the particular book is referring to? And actually, that was the book of Nahum, and I just read that there. So I just wanted to you guys to see that. I wanted you to see how these events that are happening, they're cyclical, and it wasn't prescribed to just one nation, meaning now the downfall of that nation, and even the word Babylon. Let's make sure that we pay very close attention, not just the word, but the definition of the word, because the definition of the word continues to this very day. Now, let's take a look at two important pieces of information in our introduction to Revelation, the 17th and 18th chapters. I believe that this is very, very, very important. I'm about to read Jeremiah, the 51st chapter. Jeremiah, the 51st chapter was written during the time of Jeremiah's prophetic ministry, which began in 627 BC and continued until after 586 BC. Jeremiah's ministry began in the 13th year of King Josiah. Josiah's reign around 627 BC and continued until after the fall of Jerusalem in 586 BC. Why is that important? This is important because Jeremiah spoke about the fall of Jerusalem before Daniel saw his visions. Before. Very important. Look at the dates. This is the reason why I am such an advocate of history, tying it along with the events that already happened in the Old Testament. We want to try to make sure that we always bring in as much facts as possible. That way, when it comes time for you to present your argument, you have not just the story, but you have dates and historical material to add to your argument. Jeremiah is called to write. Jeremiah was called to write in 604 BC. When did Nimrod start his reign? When? 605 BC, sounds familiar? Early manuscripts. Some early manuscripts of Jeremiah, the 51st chapter, in Hebrew, include the Codex Quirinius, the Petersburg Codex of the Prophets, the Aleppo Codex, and the Codex Leningradiensis. It is so important, I believe, for us, Mishpachar, to check out all sources. All sources. Now, according to the book of Daniel, like I stated earlier, Daniel began receiving his visions while in Babylon during the first year of Belshazzar. Belshazzar, king of Babylon. All right? Which is generally understood to be around 553 BC. But Jeremiah had already talked about the demise of Babylon prior to Daniel receiving his visions of the four metals, who was also now contributed to the four beasts. Now, this is most notable seen in Daniel chapter 7, where he has a vision of four beasts representing different world empires, different stages as the Babylonian or Babel spirit moved through Nebuchadnezzar, or what we have, the head of gold. We see it move through the Medo-Persian Empire, gold, the silver. Then we see now the brass, which represents the Greeks, the leopard with 4 wings, and the Medo-Persian Empire representing the bear with 3 ribs in his mouth. And then we see Rome, the 4th metal, being of what? The worst or the least of all of the metals, representing iron. And then it goes to another stage of iron mixed with clay. And we know that that iron represents the eagle with wings. And pay very close attention that Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, represented a lion with wings, eagle's wings. Pay very close attention to now that we don't see wings being applied to the bear. It only had 3 ribs in his mouth. But when you go now down to the Greeks now, you have the Greeks represented by which represents, a leopard. And the leopard has, guess what? 4 wings, eagle's wings. And then you see now the fruition of the wings coming into full play, where the wings represents an eagle, which is Rome. And this is displayed in front of our faces every single day. America represents the eagle, which is Rome. It's the fullness of it. With Babylon, eagle's wings. The lion had wings. Alexander the Freak, or Alexander the Greek, whatever it is that you want to call him, the leopard had 4 wings. And Rome was represented by wings. Eagle's wings. And America is a continuation, once again, of Rome. America is that great eagle. So let's go to the book of Jeremiah, 51st chapter, so we can close up the show here. Jeremiah, the 51st chapter. 51st chapter. I'm going to read it from the CSB version because it gives it a little bit more emphasis. Everything is correct with Jeremiah, the 51st chapter, but I'm going to show you now where things begin to change here a little bit. All right, so just follow along here with me. This is what the sovereign says. I'm about to rouse the spirit of a destroyer against Babylon and against the population of Leb Quamai, okay, Leb Quamai, which just means the Chaldeans. And we know this now to be the Medes. I will send strangers to Babylon who will scatter her and strip her land bare, for they will come against her from every side in the day of disaster. This is the same language that is being used in the book of Revelation 17 and 18. Now let's go to the NSAB version, verse 3. Let not him who bends his bow bend it, all right? Nor let him rise up in his coat of armor. Do not spare her young men, devote or devour all her army of destruction. Now watch how this is read and understood in the CSB version. Don't let the archer string his bow. So don't even put up a fight. Talking about the Babylonians when the Medes come in. Because the Medes come up first, then comes up the Persians. This is the reason why when we read the book of Daniel, it made mention now that the bear now stood higher on one side than the other. So the Medes came up first, then came the Persians. Verse 4, those who were slain will fall in the land of the Chaldeans, those who were pierced through in her streets. Watch this now. For Israel and Judah are not left a widow by their God, the Lord of armies. Now, verse 5 is interesting. Israel is in the midst, or they're in captivity under the Babylonians because of adultery. Their charge is adultery, harlotry, fornication, idol worshiping. That's their charge. Now we see the city that is called Babylon, the city of confusion, the city of idolatry, the city of fornication, the city of prognostication, the city of witchcraft is now about to be judged. And I'm telling Israel that her sins have been accomplished and she is not left a widow while in Babylon. She's not left a widow there. For Israel and Judah are not left a widow by their mighty one, the Lord of armies, though their land is filled of guilt against the Holy One of Israel. So she is guilty, but I'm not going to leave her as a widow. Verse 6 gets very interesting. Leave Babylon, save your lives, each of you. Don't perish because of her guilt. So Israel is guilty, but the Father here now is about to punish who? Babylon. Don't perish because of her guilt, for this is the time of the sovereign's vengeance. He will pay Babylon her what she deserves. Watch verse 7. Babylon was a golden cup in the sovereign's hand. Verse 7 is the same language that is being used in Revelation, the 17th chapter, Revelation, the 18th chapter. But what I notice now is that when we see it being used here, is making reference to one of the metals, one of the beasts that is mentioned in the book of Daniel. It is not pertaining to the nation of Israel. Again, the first usage of Babylon has been a golden cup in the hand of the sovereign, making the whole earth drunk or intoxicating all the earth. That was a remedy. That was a description of the four metals and not the nation of Israel. This is the reason why I want to make sure that when we read the book of Revelation, the 17th chapter, we're going to be fair with it. Be fair. Who is it that sits upon many waters and intoxicated the whole earth? Once again, was it Rome or was it Jerusalem? Let's read on. Verse 7. Babylon was a gold cup in the sovereign's hand, making the whole earth drunk. The nations drank her wine, therefore the nations go mad. Once again, the same language in Revelation, the 17th chapter. Suddenly, Babylon has fallen and been broken. The same thing now when you read Jeremiah 51 and 8 compared to Revelation 18 and 2, Babylon is falling. Babylon is falling. That great city, Babylon, is falling. But here we have the same language being used again, but it's referencing now Babylon during the time of Nebuchadnezzar. And also we have to be mindful is that it is documented historically now that when Cyrus took over or conquered Babylon, it was during one of the feasts of Babylon where these guys was so involved in idolatry, fornication, adultery. What's the other word? They were playing. They was involved in debauchery. This big lavish sex party. And when Cyrus came to overtake Babylon, they didn't put up a fight. Didn't even put up a fight. But they were conquered. But they didn't put up much of a fight. The doors were left open. It was easy for the Medes to just come in and overtake the Babylonians. But let's read on. We tried to heal Babylon, but she could not be healed. Abandon her. Let each of us go into his own land, for her judgments extends to the sky and reaches as far as the clouds. The same language been used in the book of Revelation, the 17th chapter again. And it should also be noted that when the Medes came into play, especially during the time of with Cyrus, let's just say Cyrus here, we have something very interesting, is that not only Israel was allowed to return to their own country, all of the other nations also was given that opportunity to go back to their own country. But our objective as Israelites is what Cyrus was doing to the nation of Israel. And Cyrus is called the Anointed for the sole purpose of letting Israel restore herself back to her former glory. But she's still in captivity because she can't function outside of the leadership or the government of the Medes and the Persians. The last time that Israel was able to operate on her own fully was during the time of Solomon. During the time of Solomon. And as we continue to go with these scriptures here, it talks about in scripture where Israel will be able to operate independently. But from the time of Nebuchadnezzar, even to this very day here, Israel was never able to operate as an independent nation. This is the reason why we say that things didn't conclude in 70 AD. And we're going to talk about those scriptures as we go into the book of Revelation, the 17th chapter and the 18th chapter. That's going to be a long breakdown, a very long breakdown. And I want to make sure that I keep that within inside of the confines of 1 hour so that it doesn't get drawn out. But let's try to finish this up right quick. All right, let's finish this up. The Lord has brought about our vindication. Our vindication. Come, let us tell in Zion what the sovereign, our mighty one, has accomplished. Sharpen the arrows, fill the quivers. The sovereign has aroused the spirit of the kings of the Medes, because his plan is aimed at Babylon, not Israel, at Babylon to destroy her. For it is the sovereign's vengeance. Watch this now. The sovereign's vengeance for his temple. Of what Nebuchadnezzar did with the temple. And what's interesting about this here now, why is it hard to see now what Vespasian and Titus did to the temple and not expect the same outcome that the Babylonians receive? Why do we believe that the Romans won't receive the same vindication that the sovereign has accomplished? Because his plan is aimed to destroy the next Babylonian idolatrous whoredom nation that is following the same things that Babylon in 605 was doing? Why do we believe that the Father won't chastise Rome, aka America? Why do we believe that? Let's read on. Raise up a signal flag against the walls of Babylon. Fortify the watch posts. Set the watchmen in place. Prepare the ambush. For the sovereign has both planned and accomplished what he has threatened against those who live in Babylon. You who reside by abundant water, rich in treasures, your end has come, your life thread is cut. Compare verse 13 to Revelation 17:1. The Lord of armies has sworn by himself, I will fill you up with men as with locusts, and they will sing the victory song over you. Read Revelation 18th chapter in comparison to Jeremiah 51:14. He made the earth by his power, established the world by his wisdom, and spread out the heavens by his understanding. When he thunders, the waters in the heavens and tumultuous, that's a tongue twister there. Tumultuous, okay, there we go. Tumultuous, and he caused the clouds to rise from the ends of the earth. He makes lightning for the rain and brings the wind from his storehouses. Everyone is stupid and ignorant. Every goldsmith is put to shame by his carved image, for he casts his images are a lie. This is now Babylon, the idols that he's referring to. There is no breath in them. They are worthless, a work to be mocked. A time of their punishment, they will be destroyed. But it says now, Jacob's portion, or a portion of Jacob, is not like these, because he is the one who formed all things. Israel is the tribe of his inheritance. Again, did this inheritance stop in 70 AD? And we're going to find out whether it stopped in 70 AD or not. The Lord of armies is his name. You are my club, my weapon of war, and with you I will shatter nations, and with you I will destroy kingdoms. When did that happen? When did that happen? Did it happen during the Babylonians? No. Did it happen during the Medo-Persian Empire? No. Greeks? No. Romans? No. Is this here a future prophecy, or can we say that this happened where Israel conquered the other nations now, physically here on the planet Earth, and there was a time where they lived comfortably? Because the type of comfortable that we're talking about is everlasting, olam, forever. We're not talking about anything that's lasting now for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about establishing a righteous kingdom, olam, which means forever. Let me read down here a little bit, because what I want you guys to do is to pick up some of the readings for yourself. All right. So basically what I want to do is kind of like end it here. Everything else is kind of like self-explanatory. And I don't need to really go into it any more. So, Mishmikah, what I'm going to do is I'm looking at a couple of things here. Is there anything else here that I want to bring to you guys' attention? I'm looking. I don't see anything else. So, what I'm going to do, Mishmikah, I want to thank you for your time out of your busy schedule today to join me here with Awakening Ministries as we did the intro to Revelation, the 17th and the 18th chapter. And the title was The Whore That Sits Upon Many Waters. Again, this was just the intro. And I want to thank you for your time and your cooperation, Mishmikah, as always. And until the next time, I'm going to say peace and blessings. I'm going to say shalom, shalom to you. May the Father continue to bless you and your family. Until the next time, peace and blessings to you. Shalom, shalom. Okay, all right. Thank you for